President Emmanuel Macron's taking on the rail unions in a showdown that could make or break his presidency. Tuesday was the first day. It's a series of rolling strikes by rail workers. It severely disrupted train services. In Paris is Melissa Bell. This is arguably exactly what was promised. What particular policy are they protesting against, if any?
This is a strike, Richard, that is really being led by the rail unions, and what they're opposing is the liberalisation, the opening up of the rail market here in France, also the end of the very particular sort of stature that rail workers have that gives them certain rights. The government is proposing that people who joined the service now would simply not get automatically those rights, that the company, that is the National Rail French company, would be regrouped into one big entity rather than the three that exist at the moment, and that various rail services would be opened up to competition. It is at the heart of what Emmanuel Macron is, Richard. It is at the heart of what he was elected for, and I think this is why these strikes are potentially very different to anything that we've seen in the past, because the government itself is going to be tested in its resolve, in its strategy, perhaps more than any other has before.
And in that testing of resolve, Melissa, it can't afford to give in or to lose, which is why I believe people are calling it Macron's Maggie Moment, which is a reference to Maggie Thatcher and the miners' strike in the 1980s, which I do remember extremely well.
This is absolutely the moment. This is the test. We saw, of course, back in the autumn, you'll remember those reforms of the labour laws. They seem to get through remarkably smoothly. This time, the rail unions are saying, well, wait a minute, Emmanuel Macron has never seen a strike by the SNCF, the French rail workers, before. He doesn't know what he's in for. We're going to make sure he falls. In fact, it is 36 days of strikes. Just like today, there are planned between now and the end of June, and that means so much more misery for commuters. Emmanuel Macron has said he will see this through no matter what. And interestingly, Richard, he's using that same strategy he used in the autumn. That is the threat of presidential decree. And he's saying to the unions, let's talk, let's find compromises, but this is going to get through whatever happens.
So, I mean, again, it's 2 days of strikes for every 3 days worked, or some variance thereof. And there will be other unions joining in. Air France, for instance, will be joining in. How much wider will this grow, do you think?
Well, I think the difficulty for the unions is that it will not grow as wide as, for instance, the last time we saw strikes on this scale, which was back in 1995. You'll remember that the government, the right-wing government of Alain Juppé, in the end folded on the most controversial measures, his reform of Social Security and pensions, because of the breadth of the movement. It sort of seemed to take in the whole of France. There were 2 million people on the streets at its height. This time, as you say, there's Air France, waste collectors, students, rail workers. But beyond that, public opinion is simply not backing the movement on the same scale as it did back in 1995.
Now, that's crucial, isn't it? Because without public opinion on their side, the strikers are onto a much more difficult, if you like, project, because I guess the answer is, what's the clever money on at the moment? Macron winning or the unions taking him down? What do most people seem to think is going to happen here?
Well, I'll give you the figure from the very latest poll, Richard, and that is 72% of people polled believe that Emmanuel Macron will win the day. These reforms will get through. And as you say, that is crucial. This is, after all, a president who has built his entire political campaign, presidential campaign, presidency on the idea of this reform. And it appears that people back him. People believe he can do it. People believe he will deliver. They also say, by the way, 53% of them, that they disagree with this strike. They disagree with the disruption being caused, and I think that gives us an indication really of which way this is going to go. And again, this idea of using presidential decree and negotiation could prove that it allows Emmanuel Macron to do what no other president has achieved so far, and if nothing else, to prove that in fact France is perhaps more reformable than we thought it was.
Melissa Bell, thank you for staying up late tonight and joining us from Paris. Thank you.